Hey there, I am so glad you're here. Come on in and enjoy Coffee Chat at the Cubbyhole. Okay, you might be thinking, coffee sounds fun, but girl, what is the Cubbyhole? The Cubbyhole was a divine little nudge on my heart, if you will, to build this space in our basement, in our home, where our friends and family could come and receive encouragement and love. And that's exactly what we've been doing. I've always known that the Cubbyhole would have a ripple effect out into the world, that it could bring encouragement and hope, not just to people that could visit here in person. That is exactly why I do Coffee Chats. I get to take some of the coolest people that are just like you and just like me, who have skill and talent, but most importantly, they have a vulnerable, relatable story that we can all glean some hope and encouragement from. So grab a coffee, cozy up, and enjoy Coffee Chats at the Cubbyhole. Well, good morning, everybody. Happy Friday. I am so glad you're here. Love that this is the month of November. I love the month of November because well, of course, it's the beginning of the holiday season, but I especially love November. You know, I think that Thanksgiving kind of gets a bum rap because you have Christmas coming and all the excitement of that holiday. But I love Thanksgiving. I love it because for so many reasons, the traditions that, you know, our families get to take part in. But I'm thankful because just of what it means, thankfulness, that when we are feeling discouragement and so many raw emotions that we might be experiencing in our life, that really there's so much hope in just taking a look at what we really do have to be thankful for. It's not the ultimate remedy. We know that there's so much more to it, but just starting with a sense of gratitude, it warms my heart, and it really resets the prescription in my lenses, if you will. And trust me, there are some days where it's harder than others, but it's such a great place to start. But I am thankful, so thankful for every one of you that tunes in, that stops in to see the stories that I get to bring to you with the beautiful guests that join me. I'm thankful for the space called the Cubbyhole that God has put on my heart, this divine little nudge to bring this to you. So today's topic, I was just talking with my guest that I am so excited. I know I'm going to glean some hope from this as well. We are going to talk about a lot of things because my awesome guest is a comedian. He's a believer. There's so much richness to get to, but we're going to talk about disappointment. What do you do when you're just faced with disappointment and you don't even know where it came from? You don't know where you're going with it. What are you supposed to do? And are we not in the middle of a lot of that right now? In this world that we're living in with so much change, so much possible disappointment, we're trying to focus on the good, but then it's going to be nice to hear a word from this incredible friend of mine, my special guest. I'd love to bring him in right now, all the way from Los Angeles, California, my friend, comedian, and author, Robert G. Lee. Good morning, Robert.
Good morning. I don't have, as we've talked about, I'm not a coffee drinker, so I have tea left over from the Cheesecake Factory from last night. So I'll just say hello.
Hello. Well, here in Michigan, what we just heard you say is you were at the Cheesecake Factory. Our restaurants are closed down. We're on a pause right now on the restaurant thing, but that's exciting that you get to go to the Cheesecake Factory.
I know. Well, we had to eat outside in the parking lot, but we were outside. That's all I cared about.
I love it. Well, that brings hope in itself. And we were just joking. I didn't let you down, but I had a feeling, I had a stirring inside of me that Robert is going to be opening his front door, waiting for the donuts. And I didn't send the donuts. I didn't want to repeat myself. I didn't want to take away from the genuineness of the first.
No, this is good because you've already opened up. We're dealing with disappointment. So this is a good start to the program. Yeah, because I had no powdered donuts on my door. But that's okay. I'll be like my mother and go, I'm all right. Don't worry about me. I'm okay.
This is absolute perfection. You're right, Robert. That's exactly how I had it planned.
Good.
I wanted you to feel disappointment so you'd be
Yes.
ready for this. So if some of you don't know, I had Robert on. He was, well, you were a guest by yourself, and then I had you on with my friend Michelle Van Dusen.
Good.
And I sent you a dozen donuts. I had them. It was the first time I ever did an Uber Eats or something like that. And they delivered them to your door because we all had donuts. So now I've set you up and there are no donuts. But you know what? What a perfect way to jump into disappointment, right? Well, congratulations, though. The first thing I want to talk about, will you please tell everybody the exciting thing that has happened to you professionally this week?
Well, this is the first time in my life. I am a new author, and I just released my book on Wednesday. It's called What's the Big Idea? A Comedian Explains God, the Universe, and Other Minor Stuff. So it's not a book like, I'm just a guy who wants to write some of my routines. Like, nobody cares about my stuff. Maybe down the road I'll be able to do that. But this book, I mean, to say it's on my heart is an understatement, but it really goes through, it's a smart Alex perspective on the intersection of science and faith. Mm-hmm. And it's like, all right, how can I do this? I mean, we even talked about at CCA a couple of years ago, they were talking about comedians are the ones that are going to bring a different perspective to the world with God's perspective. And to me, we're a very cynical society. We're a sarcastic society. And so why not a book about God and the universe from our perspective? Instead of just doing routines, let's try and use it to convince people or to give clarity as to why I believe that Christianity is a well-founded, intelligent faith. So I had a lot of fun doing it. We'll talk about it later. But yeah, that was released on Wednesday, and I found out that I'm #1 in the religious section and creation section of Amazon. Okay, that means that's faith praise. It may mean that I sold 3 books and I'm still #1. But in that particular section, I'll take what I can get.
Well, congratulations. I am so excited for you. I remember, I don't know when it was that we were originally talking about this, but it just seemed like you were pretty far into it. But I remember thinking, wow, that'll be exciting when it happens. And here it is. And we scheduled this coffee chat it was in the summer. And I remember thinking, your book is coming out. Let's schedule it then. And it's here. And I can't believe it's happened so quickly. So congratulations.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
I am so excited for you. Now, where can everybody find, I know we'll talk about it more because everything we're talking about today kind of leads into that too. It wasn't even intended. It's just part of it. But where can they find your book?
Well, Amazon.com. So it's on Kindle, the e-version, and of course paperback. Hardback is like $33, but the paperback's like 18. It's a long book. It's 300 and something, almost 400 pages. I mean, it's on Barnes and Noble and different things, but I think Amazon is the one that charts sales and all that. So I just send everybody to Amazon. Just type in "What's the Big Idea?" and my picture will come up with the book.
Oh my gosh. Well, after this coffee chat, I know they're going to want to read it even more because all that you have to share. But let's also start with, I'm just wondering, do you have any funny stories from this crazy thing we're calling this pandemic? I mean,
well, crazy story. Well, this is about disappointment. And I know you got into it talking about how hard it is to get through. I have a great relationship with God, and I've got to say, I'm just stunned at how we have made it through. It's been 8 months now. And my wife and I did not know I wasn't going to work for probably a year. I had no idea that was going to happen. But somehow we have as much money now as we did when we started off in the pandemic back in March. And God gave us things like, he gave us the shows I was working on, paid the crew for not working on up to 4 shows. And then we got the stimulus package. And then I got residuals, huge surprise residuals from a project I did 2 years ago that finally got on Sirius radio, and they put it into heavy rotation 6 months later. And in April, I started getting money, and that's kept us alive. And the big bonus is that every once in a while, our neighbors won't pick up their Amazon package. So we get little bonuses. So, you never know what's going to happen.
It's like a manna from heaven. It is.
It's manna. Look, not everything's my size, but you send it back, you get a credit. It all works out great. So it's just fun.
How does your power cap look on you? How does that look?
You've been peeking.
Yes. I know. I have Google Earth. I know these things. I love that. You are so funny. So I want to go back to the book a little bit. What prompted the idea for you to write the book? It's been in the works for a while.
Again, dovetailing in exactly what we talked about yesterday, and everything about this. I was at a very low point professionally. So I worked at a church, and everyone knows I've been doing stand-up for years, warm up. But I started working at the church, gosh, it was 20 years ago when I started, and it was just a part-time job, and I helped the drama department, and we did videos. Then it became a full-time job because they dangled healthcare in front of me, and I really dedicated my life to it. And the new pastor came in and just got rid of the drama department. So the gag was, it happened on Ash Wednesday, and I just I tell everyone that our church gave me up for Lent. That's pretty much what happened. And that was in, 16. And so by 2017, excuse me, no, that was 2015. And so in 16, I was going, all right, God, what do you want me to do? I tried to make a new movie, and because we made a movie and I loved it, and it was so much fun. I thought that's where I'm supposed to go. And every door was closing. It just wasn't, the path wasn't there. So it was a solid year of me going, what do you want me to do, God? I'll do whatever you want. So at one time, this was in 16, I wrote down 4 words, and I put them on my refrigerator. I said, Ann, I don't know. My wife's Ann. I said, I don't know what this is, but these are the words that we're going to pray over the next year, or however, until God answers it, after a year of praying. And I was unencumbered. Now, I still was able to make a living from residuals and TV warm-up, but it's not a passion. I was unencumbered. I felt called. I didn't know what it was. I knew God was calling me to something, and I knew he'd give me skills and talents, and I loved him, and I was a soldier ready to go in, but I didn't know what was going to happen. So I felt called. Then I felt inspired. I said, God is going to fill me with something. And again, I don't know what it is, but I know he's going to do it. He equips those that he calls. And then I got excited. And it was the excitement that was the faith part. It's like, I don't know what it is. I have no idea. And it was a year before I got the answer to that prayer. And when that answer came, I looked back over that year from 16 to 17, and I saw that God set me up. Everything that happened to me, being on jury duty, there's a story in there about having lunch with a lesbian, the stories I was reading in my Bible study. All these things came together to be the foundation for my book. And when I got the idea for the book, it was like, God, you're good. You're good. You knew what you were doing. So it was a year of floundering, actually 2 years of me just praying. And then a year after I got those 4 inspiring words, that I was just, I was in my Bible study. I was going to my small group going, what is it, guys? What am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to do? And so just a lot of time in prayer, but you have to be patient. You have to have faith. So I tried to keep that excitement up for the final answer. Then the idea came like a big brainstorm, and it was like, oh, I'm a comedian. I can talk about faith and science. Now, I know nothing about science. It's like people ask me, were you interested in this your whole life? I'm like, no, I'm the smart aleck in the back of the class making fun of things. But so I just read a ton of physics books and science books. And what I found was, oh, it's the craft of being a comedian, where I can take things and show them from a different perspective for people who don't want to read all those physics books, and kind of be the common sense guy going, this doesn't make sense, and this is kind of funny. So that was the genesis. So from 17 to now, it was writing draft after draft after draft, trying to find it, knowing I was on the right path, but still not exactly knowing what it was. And then when it all came together, it was amazing. I've made a movie in the past, and you have to struggle every step of the way to get distribution and to raise money. This book, when I was done, when it was ready, I got a publisher in a matter of a week. It's like, how does this happen? I got 2 publishers fighting over it. It's like, wait, how did that happen? And then an editor came out of nowhere, and she edited my book for free and said, I'll pay for anything you want. I didn't have to pay anything because the publisher did the book. But all these things, like, God, what is going on? And then the date, it's like, well, gosh, it'd be really nice to have it published by Christmas, but they say it could take up to a year. And they said, no, we're going to fast track this. It's going to be out November 18th. It's like, what? What? So this is beyond me. I have no idea what God is going to do with it, but I think, well, anytime you're a soldier, you want to be used. And it's like Isaiah saying, God, will you send me? But I'm just more excited about this book than anything I've ever done in my life. And that's not even hyperbolic. I woke up yesterday and I went through all the notes, and I just said, this is so good. People have to hear this. So I'm not trying to sell it. I'm just excited what God did. And he was able to use me to do it. That's why I'm stunned.
No, in no way do I feel like you're trying to sell. What I hear from you is it's such an exciting concept because I didn't know it before I felt it. You know, there's a knowing, but then there's a feeling. And what you are talking about, I resonate with so much. My husband has always, for me, he's called it the cubbyhole feeling. You know, we're creative people.
Yeah.
We're here, we're there, we're all over. I want to do this, I want to do that. And he always reminds me when I'm all like, what am I doing? That if it's not the cubbyhole feeling, the feeling that I felt with the cubbyhole, that's like, everybody, I don't even have to ask any, I know it, you know it. And then he gives the provision. I forget which Psalm it is, but I just have it hanging in our bathroom that where he guides, he provides. And that's the encouragement that I'm hearing you say, is that when you go with something, whether it even seems to make sense or not, he'll give you that manna, that daily need, whatever you need daily, the daily bread to get it done. And then when you have that peace, I love what you're saying, because I've experienced it and I didn't trust it before, but that is so exciting to hear you explain it that way. And that gives
all you have to do is look behind you and see the pictures and know, and everybody has to know that you took your basement and made it into a performance area. It's like, yeah, that's kind of nuts, but you've seen so much happiness and growth and people being touched down in your basement.
Yeah.
It's like, it's the hospitality to the nth degree. So it's like you're just showing visually an image of how you followed God.
Yeah, and with what, thank you for that. And that is exactly what I feel, and that is God. And what I also hear you saying, and it's important too to kind of just stick with the when you get that feeling. My friend just called me this morning just before we were starting, and she's like, "Oh my gosh, Marlo, I have the cubbyhole feeling. It's about writing, and oh my gosh, like." And she's felt that before, but now we call it the cubbyhole feeling. You guys, that what we're talking about, we have an experience that you just feel it, and it's the opposite of feeling the angst of when we are constantly trying to take matters in our own hands. Of course, it's important to throw the noodles against the wall, and we want to see what might stick. But when you know, and that I thank you for sharing that, because that gives such a great visual. I'm with you on that. So I have a question for you with regard to disappointment. We're talking about God, and as I've talked about before, you know, people that don't know God. Even when you do know God, sometimes we have these broken moments. What do you say? This is a loaded question, so just hang on. Do you have a seatbelt? Fasten it. I know you'll do great with this question. If God is the answer, Robert, why do you think, in your opinion, is the world so broken?
That's an easy one. Sure. Yeah, hold on there.
I have something here I might have written down.
God is amazing, and that, well, I mean, to use the Christian side of it, and I know you said not everybody's walking in faith, but unfortunately, the only way to prove love is to give people free will, and that's the Christian perspective. The only way that God can know that you trust him and that I trust him and people like Job and Joseph trust him is to give them a choice. And the choice is, do you love me more than that? Mm-hmm. And so if you want automatons and robots, then sure, take away free will. But true love can only happen with a choice. And we have a choice every day to go after our higher nature or follow our base instincts. And you know how many times we all fall every single day and go after our base instincts. Yeah. But the story of Job, Tim Keller's got a great book. If you want to talk about what you're talking about, Tim Keller's book, we're doing our Bible study right now. It's Walking with God Through Pain and Suffering. Mm-hmm. And it's one of those books that was perfect to read during this pandemic. But God knows so much more than we do. He knows so much more than we do. And the story of Job is basically a bet that Satan said, he only loves you. Job only loves you, God, because of what you give him. And God said, no, he doesn't. And God he didn't just do this story to win a bet. He did it to give Job a deeper love for him. So by taking everything away, Job never cursed God. His wife said, curse God and die. His friend said, you've done something wrong. Job said, I don't know what I did, but it's not that. And he complained to God. He said, I want to die. But it was faithful and never left God's side. And that's what God wants. And when it was over, God replenished everything, but their love was deeper. So why is it a broken world? Because that's the way that God can know for sure. One, it's two purposes, that we love him. And two, it's how he brings us closer to the character of Jesus. That's the word sanctification, another big word. We start off on one side, which is totally broken and falling, and slowly but surely through the lessons that God gives us, the perfect parent who knows more than we do.
Right.
It's like being on the football field and exercising and getting your body in shape. Then eventually you become the character of his son, which is what he ultimately wants. That's what we're supposed to do. So as we look more like him, it doesn't happen without suffering. And if you say, why am I the only one suffering? Well, a few other people suffered throughout history, and Jesus is one of them. So are you any better than him? So why is it a broken world? In God's design, somehow, I wish it wasn't that way, but that's the only way to show true love and for him to show that he loves us and to join us together. So, I mean, it's a huge, huge question, but the bottom line is it builds faith, it builds trust, and it builds love. And it's obviously the only way to do it. I wish it was different, but God knows more than me.
For a great answer. And if anybody could handle a really loaded question like that, I knew that you could. Two follow-up questions from that. One is, I love that you're mentioning Job and, of course, Joseph. Job lost, yesterday, let me back up, when I was doing my promo for you, I said, what do you do when God strips everything away? And then I narrowed it down to professionally for you. Because Job, like when you, in the scheme of things, he lost everything. I mean, what he lost and what he experienced, oh my gosh, I mean, it was incredible. But I like talking about that because do you ever feel like, did you ever have a moment where you're like, I don't want to compare myself? I mean, I know what you say, you know what you're talking about. You lost things professionally, but people might get caught up in this game in their head where, oh no, I can't complain because I just lost things professionally, or I just lost my encouragement. And then, I can't feel that because the world is going through so much right now. Have you ever caught yourself in that game, and what have you done with that?
Well,
honoring what you
I understand the comparison game. And most of us compare ourselves the other way. It's like, well, I know I sin, but not as much as them. I know I have an anger problem, but not as much as them. I know I steal, but just a little. It's like those people are, that's called the Hitler defense. I'm not as bad as Hitler. But the other side is, well, I don't deserve God's grace because, I'm not as good as that person. I'm not Mother Teresa. I'm not Billy Graham. So you just have to get over all that. You can't compare yourself to others. You say, my journey. What am I supposed to do? What am I learning here? I'm in show business. I'm on the D team. I'm not in the B, C, or A team. It's just, what? I'm fortunate enough to make my living doing it, but I don't compare myself to, the top stars. It's like, yeah, this guy makes millions and millions of dollars, but you know what? I'm on the field. I get to play the game. God has been gracious enough to me to give me the gift of making my living as a comedian for over 30 years. So with my story, all I can do is say, okay, how can I get better? How can I get closer to God? So yeah, the comparison game, it's a loser's because when you get to comparison, you're like one step away from envy, and that'll eat you alive. So I try not to compare myself either up or down.
I love it. That's so great. I can't let this go. You just mentioned the word anger, and it triggered something for me that I want to say. When I started doing whatever, it wasn't even a formed thing yet. It ended up becoming coffee chats at the Cubbyhole, but it was right in the beginning of the quarantine. I said, hey, Robert, it was like a Friday or Saturday night. You want to pop on live here with me, and we'll talk and we'll have a conversation. We were talking about comedy because there's a lot of new comics that tune in and are just, that watch. And I thought you can give some tips. But then you started telling a very vulnerable story about yourself, about how at one point in your life you struggled with anger. And I know so many people that struggle with that. And I especially know a lot of men that carry that with them. And that's what causes heart attacks, is we carry this guilt or whatever inside of us for the things that we feel that we're not, or that we've done, or that we're regretful for, ashamed of. It was because of you that the coffee chats at the Cubbyhole, the platform, the way that I do it, my focus that I started to listen to God on was that we tell relatable, vulnerable stories. Yeah, I share the gifts and the talents and the great things that are going on in the guest's life. But then we get to the vulnerable, relatable stories, and you are the reason for that. Because after you shared that, I had so many people comment about that. But for me personally, it really spoke to my heart that, wow, this is great stuff. We all have gifts and talents, but when you could talk about the stuff and talk about the healing in it, that was it. And now this whole show is based on that. So thank you for your vulnerability and being willing to share.
We're all on the same path, but on different parts of that path. And all you can do is inspire somebody to say, it's better over here. And these are the lessons I've learned. And that's what mentorship is. And that's what age is. So hopefully you get some experiences. No, I've made a lot of mistakes. And if I can do anything to help somebody avoid they'll make their own mistakes. But when it's all said and done, God redeems everything, and you can come back and still, my wife, that was year 19 in our marriage when I talk about that. And from year 16 to year 19, my wife had a real hard time in our family because she was the nurturer, and our family didn't need her anymore. And her anger was growing, but I had an anger problem. And that anger problem, I'm not dismissing it or trying to make it smaller. But I came from a family of origin where conflict wasn't allowed, and so you just swallow all the anger because, oh no, that's not the Christian thing to do. You can't think that way. It's like, but I do think that way. And so mine, I would hold it and hold it and hold it and then burst. And that's such an ineffective way of communicating. And it became a habit where I've got to be nice. I've got to be good. I can't express myself. It's like, no. So what I've learned through therapy at year 19 of our marriage, now we're at year 38. So 39, excuse me. Oops, don't want to make that mistake. Just last month. But we're in a great place now, my wife and I. But you learned how, with anger, I can get to disappointment. I'm okay to get to disappointment. I can't let it rise up to anger. And so I've got tools now where I try and nip at the bud. Now, do I do it all the time? No. Something will set me off. But, you get better and better and better at handling whatever your problem is. But yeah, anyway, so yes, I've been a jerk my whole life, and it's just a matter of curtailing how much of a jerk I am.
I love that you're even joking about that, but it's so interesting in my own life, in working with clients. What I hear all the time is this concept when somebody has anger, and then we'll move on for this. There's so many other things I want to talk to you about, but I'll hear this phrase, that's not the person though that I'm dealing with. When you're dealing with somebody with anger, oftentimes that's not the person. And you were just talking about maybe some deep-rooted things because maybe it's the way you were raised where you have to repress it. Well, that's going to well up somewhere. So oftentimes when somebody's exhibiting some sort of behavioral something that is not pleasing, oftentimes it's not the person. It's the unhealed roots. It's so much. So thank you for just being the inspiration and for sharing, and even what you just shared about that today. That's going to bless somebody's heart. I know it. I know that it will. In your book, you basically say there's 3 types of people you describe. What are they? Tell us about them.
Another one that came from reading a lot of books, and it's like when God says something once, you should pay attention. If he says it twice, you ought to really. If he says it 3 times, this is an important lesson. And I didn't know this. It took a little bit of study, but God tells the story of the prodigal son 3 times in the Bible. He tells it through Jonah, which you don't even realize, but the first 2 chapters of Jonah, he's the prodigal son that tries to run away. Yep. The last 2 chapters of Jonah, he's the older brother, who is the moralist, who thinks, no, this should be run my way. And both of those are wrong. And that's when Jesus tells the story of the prodigal son. People always miss the elder brother. And then God tells the very same story in Romans 1, 2, and 3. He talks about the rebel who says there is no God. He talks about the moralist who thinks that they're going to make it to heaven by their own good works. He says, nope, neither one works. The only option is option number 3, and that's the broken person who knows that they've been saved by grace. Mm-hmm. And so those are basically, you can divide all of humanity into those 3 categories. God says, I would rather you be, don't be lukewarm. Be hot or cold. Be the rebel, be the moralist, and then realize being middle of the road doesn't work. You have to accept with humility who God is, and just realize you're saved by grace. So those, I obviously there's a lot more to say to that, but I didn't realize 3 different kinds of people, and God really wants us to know, where do you fall? Where are you? Mm-hmm. You would rather be a rebel and angry than be that person who thinks I got it all together.
Gosh, saved by grace. That's so good. So much goodness in all of that. Are there stories in your life that lead you to believe that all of this is true?
Yeah. Well, it's when we talk about God's providence. See, all right, I will go to quickly on the story of Joseph on providence and how God weaves things together. when at we all know the end of the story, and Joseph says to his brothers, "You intended it for evil. God intended it for good." God, I believe with all my heart that He takes your life and He weaves things in, and it's this huge tapestry. He wove Jesus throughout the Old Testament, and we see Him pop up all the time. Go, oh, that's the character of Jesus. He's in Passover. He's all over. But then when He came true, when he came to Earth and broke through time and space, then we say, oh, we were introduced to you already. And that's what God does with stories. That's what He does with our life. Mine came down to two check boxes that changed my life. And it's just amazing how, Michelle Van Dusen says, I have great insights. Well, thank you. I'm glad you got the money I received and sent you, Michelle. So where was I going? Okay, so two check boxes. And this is a story in my own life that I can't deny that, God was behind this. I was going to, when I was in high school, I had to check a box on my SAT where I wanted to go to college. And I was going to IU, Indiana University, because my dad went there, my sister went there. I was set, I've got t-shirts, I've got sweatshirts, I'm going to IU. But the SAT says, check another box. You can check two boxes. Oh, all right, Ohio University. I'll do OU because that's the state next door and it's very close. I didn't give a thought about it. Turns out it was the perfect university for me. They recruited me. They saw everything I did. They had radio television programs that you could put your hands on because I had done that in high school. We had a career center at my high school where I had worked on equipment. I had a radio show and we worked on television. At IU, you couldn't touch it till you were a grad student. So I realized with great disappointment, I don't get to go where I'd planned. But God didn't want me to go to IU. He wanted me to go to OU. When I went to OU, I met this cute little girl. Cute little brunette sitting in the middle of my introduction to radio and television class. That woman became my wife. Mm-hmm. My whole life would have been different if I didn't check that box. Yeah. And because I was at Ohio University, it led to my second box, and that was I heard Josh McDowell at a big conference, and he was there at our school for 3 nights. And the last night, they sent out a card to everybody and said, check this box if you want to know more. And I checked that box. And that's when they came over to my house about 5 minutes later, and I prayed to receive Christ. And so 2 check boxes changed my life. But it was all set up because God says, I don't want you to go here. I want you to go there. And I had huge disappointment, and it turned out to be the best thing that ever happened in my life. And there's so many stories like that I just happened to be at the right time at the right place. But something that God did wove into me His plans for me. And Christianity is a hindsight religion. You don't see what happens till you look back. We look back with 20/20 vision. Not to say 20/20, that's a curse word now. But it's like, that's the way Christianity works.
We're going to have a new meaning for 20/20 vision. For sure.
Exactly. That's just a quick story. But yes, I have so many stories in my life that I call it God's track record. That anytime I'm in a dark place or don't know what I'm doing, I just think back and, oh yeah, God saved me here, 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 and here. And it gives me faith to get through the dark times because I know He's always come through. He has never let me down. I've gone through huge disappointments. I've made big mistakes. I've been disciplined, but He always comes through. And so right now, I hope my faith is rock solid. I don't know when I'll be sifted like wheat next, but I love the relationship and what He's done. And this book is the latest one. Another long disappointment that came out with something that I can't believe He gave me this gift. So yeah, my life is filled with stories of how God has come through time and time again.
Christianity is a hindsight. Did you say religion?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, I've always loved that concept of just you're going forward and then just to stop in your tracks and turn around and go, oh, when we attach so many words to things, I know I've done that in my life, like, oh, this happened or that happened. And we're just caught up in that moment. When we turn around and see the lessons in it, if we have the wisdom to grab that different prescription in our lens and turn around and go, okay, I see. And also what you're saying is it gives so much peace, that concept. It's just trusting in God, trusting in the checking of the boxes. And I love that you put a value on that. Because you have the eyes to see that. So many people would just, might overlook that there's so much value in trusting that we can do the possible. Just when we're feeling hopeless, just to do the possible, have the adjustment kind of as much as we can, and the attitude in trusting even in when we're just weak and on our knees and in tears and saying, I don't know, God, to just trust that he has us and there is a plan, and that we will be able to turn back around and see it. So thank you for that reminder. That's incredible.
Good. I'm glad.
You have to share. So yeah, obviously you're a believer. What advice would you have for folks that are trying to lead a well-balanced Christian life?
Wow. Well balanced. Well, again, I've been down the road a while, and I think that there are ingredients that if you the problem is the mess. You get stuck in the mess, and you're you're disappointed. You don't want to, and it's always that question of where do I go? What do I do? And if you just focus, I'm a very analytical and organized person. So mine comes down to I call it BOP, BOP, belief, obedience, perseverance. Those three things, I think, are the ingredients for a successful life with God. You have to believe in him. If you don't believe in him, pardon me, he really can't help you because it's that relationship. The belief starts on the road with a relationship and knowing that God is your father. He loves you more than anything else. He wants you to become the person that he knows you can be. So belief is fundamental. But then you get to obedience. And boy, this happened to me just last week. How many times do I have to obey? How many times do I have to go back to it? And it's that we constantly fall. We constantly make mistakes. But that obedience, you can't just do whatever you want to do. And I know no one, and that's the reason a lot of people don't come to Christianity, because it's like, well, I don't want to follow these set of rules. It's not following a set of rules. It's doing what your father says. This is the best thing for you. Mm-hmm. And if you have that obedience, then God will reward you. Mm-hmm. And I'm not talking about trying to get into heaven by being moral. That's not the point. But if God says, this is your issue, you need to work on that. When you feel that tugging, you need to do it and you need to act on that. So I think obedience is really a huge thing. And then it's perseverance. It's what we're talking about, going down that path. Paul says running the race and making it through to the end. Don't give up. Perseverance is so important because you do get knocked down, but it's a good thing you get knocked down. The athlete doesn't say, man, I've got to run another lap around the track. It's like, well, when you're ready, you won't be ready for the meet unless you work out now. And God knows that. And so my advice to everyone is never ask for patience, because God will make you be in positions where you need patience, and it's horrible. So you learn to control those prayers. But so I always tell people, be BOP. It's like belief, obedience, perseverance. Those are my three key words that help me get through a lot of life.
Oh my gosh, so good. Is all of that in your book?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Oh, that is awesome. Two things. One, I'm so glad that you mentioned Paul, because, well, let me put this up here. Who said this? Oh, June quoted you. That comparison is one step away from envy. That's what she's quoting you on that. And I love that, because when you mentioned Paul, I often think of Paul and I'm like, Paul was in a dungeon. He had such goodness, so much that he wanted to go out and do. And God was like, or he's in this dungeon, had a pretty rough ending to his life, but he was faithful. And I often feel guilty. Oh, I'm comparing myself about this, or this professionally is challenging me, or this or that. And I try not to compare, but I love that you said not to compare, because we are in it in what we are in. And I love that you talk about Paul, because he is such a great example. We don't have to diminish or belittle or play small with the feeling that we have about our own disappointment. But he is a good example, though, of having faith through it all. So there is.
If there's a hero of the Bible, it's Paul. Good grief. And there's a guy who had a lot of anger.
Yeah.
He's going around killing Christians. Here, I'll hold the cloak while you guys stone him. Paul had a lot of issues, and I can relate to Paul a lot. And God just keeps going, you know what? My grace is sufficient for you, even though you want to have it different. No. And for him to say, there's so many things. Paul is, he's my guy. I can't get enough of him.
I love Paul for men too. Not that I want to generalize, but I just know professionally a lot of men carry there's like a lot of guilt about maybe their past, and that they don't want to talk about it. There's the John Wayne theory. I've done this or I've done that. There's no way I could be a Christian. Don't even talk to me about it, because I couldn't. You don't know what I've done. And I love the story of Paul for that reason, that the life that he led. And then we're also talking about, eyesight and perspective. And the prescription in our lens, and that he was knocked off his horse and blinded. And sometimes it takes that for us to be able to see clearly and to see Jesus. So Paul, so many wonderful things about
Preach, girl, go for it.
Okay. So you were talking, I love your not metaphor. What's the word? Your oh my gosh, I just lost the word.
Could be analogy, could be simile, could be a metaphor.
I just lost it. The BOP. Why am I not thinking of that word?
Acronym.
Acronym. It's one of my favorite words. It's just a fun word to say. I use it all the time, but I just lost it. I think because I'm so excited about this point. The B stands for belief in your acronym. What do you do about the people that are in the precursor stage over here? They're over here. They're like, there's a belief that they don't I wasn't even planning on that fitting together. People that are like, you don't know what I've done, or I've been ashamed. I've been shamed in quote unquote religion. Not that faith and religion are obviously pretty different, but what do you say to people that are like, no, like I don't, are you kidding? I don't believe. So what do you have to say to the people that might be sitting there right now that don't believe, they don't plan on believing? And
well, I think the reason I wrote this book, to bring it around to that, is because it answers the question. It's that I am trying to show that there is such a preponderance of evidence that proves who God is that you can't deny it. Now, why do people deny Christ and say they don't? Josh McDowell says we deny him for 3 reasons: ignorance, a moral problem, and pride. But another reason is that Christianity's we've made some mistakes, and we are not a religion that has a very good PR agent. And I think there's so many things that turn people off about Christians. That's like, all right, get over the followers. You're not following the followers. You're following the leader. And all these followers have made tons of mistakes. And so I kind of throw a lot of people under the bus when I talk about Christianity, because we have blown it time and time again. But the reason for the book is to get rid of that one word, ignorance. I go through the universe and show that it's amazing the amount of facts that are in the book about things that we've all forgotten from high school, but how the fine tuning that God used to make this universe, and then our world, the amazing amount of things and the impossibility of life even existing on this planet, but God made it so. And then your body, how amazing the body is. All these things were done with such an intelligent design that, to me, the preponderance of evidence is I can't deny that somebody designed this. And then I introduce the person who says, the deity who says, that was me, I did it. And I try and unpack a lot of things about God, the Bible, and Jesus, and explain this is why you don't like Christianity, because the world is broken. I understand that, but understand that your personal journey, we've gotten rid of ignorance, and hopefully gotten rid of your pride and your moral problem. Jesus will deal with that later on down the road. You just have to accept the fact that something is bigger than you. So where I lead people is, it's not the emotional side. I was told my whole life, Jesus loved me. Well, my parents loved me. My friends loved me. It didn't mean that much. But when I found out what God's plan was, for me, that's what clicked. And that's why I wrote this book, because I come from it. I'm not an intellectual, but I react more on the intellectual side than on the emotional side. Maybe it's my maleness, I don't know, but that's how I operate. It's very difficult to get, I'm getting older, I'm turning into an old softie, so I have the emotion, but I come from it like, well, this makes sense. I can't deny this. So that's where I would go with people, first and foremost. And books like Lee Strobel's Case for Christ, you go through that book, and he became a Christian, a guy who tried to disprove Christianity by proving and seeing beyond a shadow of a doubt that Jesus Christ died and rose from the dead. There's so much evidence. Josh McDowell's Evidence That Demands a Verdict is a much more difficult book, but those are on the intellectual side where you can't deny. And so at some point you get to the point of, I don't want to believe this, but I can't deny what I know. And that's how I bring people, I think, that's how I came to Christianity, and that's what I would suggest. So much in what you're saying, Robert. It's so rich and it's so good. And I almost just want to pause, like just to take, I'm so glad that this is recorded so that people can just take this. They can stop and watch it over and over again.
I love it. I appreciate everything that you're saying. We have some questions here. Let's go.
Oh, okay.
Well, the most important question, Michelle wants to know. We've covered this, Michelle. I'm walking to class late.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, Michelle was our counterpart there with our show with the donuts. But yeah, I couldn't think of anything to send this time, and I didn't want to seem disingenuous, so I just thought, you know what? We'll save all this awesomeness just for the show. Let's see. Michelle also wants to know if your book is Audible yet.
No, and Rhonda Corey asked the same thing. She said she wants me to call her up every night and read a chapter to her. I actually, because people are asking
to read.
I talked to the publisher, and right now they're saying for them there's just not much. I don't know, profit's the wrong word, but it doesn't work as well for them. Now it's 97,000 words, and so if I do an Audible, I'll start investigating that next spring. I think the book it'll have to hit a certain level for the publisher to say, yeah, let's do that, because it takes hours and hours and hours to read that much, because I don't want to give it to somebody else. And you have to understand, there's a lot of scientific terms in here, so it would take me a long time just to pronounce everything that I've written down. So no, there's no plans for an Audible, so you'll have to do the ebook or the paperback or spend a lot of money and get the hardback, or again, I can call you up every night and read a different chapter.
Yeah, if you could just do that, that would be great. We'll Rhonda will log in. Just go on Facebook, do a Facebook Live.
Although I will say, in about 2 weeks, I'm starting every week. I'm going to release another chapter on YouTube and Twitter and Instagram and all that. So I will be doing a 2-minute program, bit by bit. It'll take me about a year, or maybe even longer, but I'll go through the entire book, chapter by chapter, condense it from this big to take it down to that. But I am going to start a weekly program.
Now, I know you mentioned a video blog. Is that what you're referring to? Or are you
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So a video, a vlog. I don't know what that, so it's not a podcast, but it's 2-minute video blog. Yes.
I love it. Here's another one. June. I think June had the honor of reading some of the excerpts, if not the whole book. So she's giving a great testimonial here that it's amazing. And also
June was one of those fantastic people. If people could be as enthusiastic as June, I would just have a great life. And writing on those that wave of enthusiasm. June read the entire book. She helped out so much, and it was because we went on a little mini tour when I was back in Indiana. I went down to Kentucky and performed with her, and struck up a friendship through CCA. And she's writing her book. And her journey to get to her book and my journey to get to my book are different, but they both come from a place inside that's like, we have to do this. So June was great, enthusiastic, and yeah, she helped out so much forming this in those early chapters where it's like, it's unwieldy, it's huge, it's big, it's like, yeah, she read way too many words and was very kind in her response.
She's great. I want to talk about June for a second, and I want to talk about publishing for anybody that is on that path, because I just realized I don't really map out the reasons why I have everybody on and when, but as we just talked about, God lines things up for a reason. I just had June on the show, and she was talking about her book, Surely God, You Can Hear Me. And then last week I had my friend Vicki Gould, who is a publisher and a book coach. And so I would just love to get your input to anybody that's out there that wants to write a book. Your book it's a big book. It's a big topic.
It's a big book. Yeah.
It's a lot of work. It's a lot of research. It's a lot of greatness. What do you say to somebody that's just overwhelmed and they're like, my head is floating. Where do I begin? Where do I begin when I put my pencil on the paper?
Well, everything, the creative process is such a fascinating one, but that's how I've lived my whole life. I have that little sliver of God's personality, which is creativity. And some people do it through art. Some people do it through music. Some people do it through speaking. Mine was always writing, and I love to write. And I learned how to get ideas down. And I didn't know I was going to write this book. I never in my wildest dreams was I going to write a nonfiction book explaining theology and science. It's like, well, where did that come from? You have to follow that muse. June's came from her whole life, and she had to deal with a lot of things with her father and her family, and overcome the problems that she had, the huge obstacles that God put in front. And she chose life. She chose her higher self. She chose to rise above, even though alcoholism and pain and all that she went through. So her story, different than my story. Your story is your story. And whenever people ask about the creative process, I say it's called brainstorming. You just put down everything. Doesn't matter. You don't edit. That's the first thing you do. You just write down everything you can think of. You organize later. What's the main thing you want to say? Just keep writing, brainstorm. This leads to that. That leads to this. And then whenever I do screenplays, that's what I do. I just write and write and write. And then when I've written out everything that I can think of, then I organize it. So it's brainstorming every idea you have. Then organize it and kind of put it, oh, that's the beginning, that's the middle, that's the end. I don't have to go into the dramaturgy of how you do a screenplay or how you do a book. But when you organize it, you can say, oh, that's a good hook into my opening chapter. Oh, this has to be there. Oh, that's the climax of the book. This is the point I'm getting to. And then you start to write it. And as you write it, just understand your first draft. In showbiz parlance, it's called the vomit pass. You just blah, everything that comes out. So it's like, it's going to be unwieldy. It's going to be messy. When my editor went over everything, she wrote back and said, well, Bob, you don't have to solve every problem in the world. And I went, yeah, you're right. And that's the problem with every first draft of screenplays and books. Yeah. You overwrite. And so then it's the process of editing. So I cut out about 8,000 words. Some people probably will wish that I cut out another 8,000. But I trimmed it down. And some things like, I don't need to say that. That's mean-spirited. Oh, I don't like that. That's not necessary. So you cut back and then you find it. And so the process is letting this creative project find itself. I love Michelangelo's quote. People said, how do you carve a statue? And he says, well, I look at the statue, I see the horse, and I chip away everything that's not horse. And so that's what you do with your creative projects. You look at it, and then you see it, and you chip away everything that doesn't help your main point. And by the time it's done, after 4, 5, 6 drafts, you find it. One of the most famous stories for me is M. Night Shyamalan, who wrote The Sixth Sense. It's a spoiler alert. I don't think people have to, they won't be shocked by this, but Bruce Willis is dead. And he doesn't know it until the end of the movie. And that's the big twist and the big shocker, and it kicked his career off. It took M. Night Shyamalan 10 drafts before he realized that Bruce Willis was dead. Yeah. And it was that, oh. And then the movie became the movie. I always tell people his latter movies, he should have done a few more drafts. But that movie, he found it, and the creative process took a while to find it. So it's just a process, and you can't hurry it up, and you can't get mad at yourself, and you have to just say, you know what? It's going to be what it's going to be. And eventually you say, now it's ready. And for me, as I said, when it was ready, boom, 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 everything just happened. The publisher came, the editor came. I was like, oh God, I guess I'm ready. I guess it's done. And he says, and I tell Ann, even though I'm so worried about every draft and the final process, is it good, is it not? I just take those words from Babe, and that's when the owner looks down and says, good enough, pig, good enough. And that's what I feel God is saying to me. It's good enough, pig, good enough.
That's important. My turned up. Is it mine? No. Do you have a phone? Do you have us on a different source there?
No, but your voice went a little wonky right there.
Yeah, I just got echoey. It was like I was on a different source. Anyway, I love everything that you just said. I absolutely agree. And I didn't know this before. I didn't know this is what stopped me, is that, and I've called it the same thing, the vomit version. You just have to just put it all out, because you said that is the most important thing, because that's when you're looking and digging for the main thing you want to say. But the thing that keeps us from a lot of creative projects is we don't know what we want to say, but that's where you find it. And there is a definite correlation between this topic and everything else we were talking about trusting God. Jump in and do the possible. Just vomit on the page. That's the best way to describe it. You just get it all out. And then, you start to see it take shape.
Yes.
And you go, and then you get excited, and it will happen when you do that work. But it's that icky, unknowing, like you have to start there. And
the only way to stop it is to not do anything. You will never discover anything if you go, it's got to be perfect, I can't do it. The creative constipation, it's you got to get over that. The blank page, don't worry about it. Just put things down, and it's the process of discovery. And that's what's so much fun. It's like, oh, I didn't know that's what I wanted to say. Well, of course not, because you hadn't started the project. You discover it as you go. And that's the fun of it.
Yes. And when God has a plan for that, he will get out the chisel. He will help you shape it, form it, see it. And it's just, I love that this is just all going into everything we were just talking about. Look at this. Monica Harrington just said, what's the big idea? I just ordered it on Amazon.
And Monica, if you wouldn't mind, I would love to hear your comments. I really, because when you do a stand-up comedy routine, you hear instantaneously what people think. With a book, it's like, good grief, I just have to wait, and I may have to wait for weeks for people to get back to me. And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut off that last comment, but yeah, I would love for people to write me and let me know what they think, good, bad, or ill. I don't care. It's just I want to engage.
I'm glad that you said that. David and I were just having this conversation the other day that leadership is a lonely place because everybody feels that, oh, they know, and when you write a book, that's your heart and your soul you're putting out there. It is nice to get that feedback. It's not like we're, people are saying, oh, we're needy in that. It's just that you'd like to hear. Everybody likes to hear or constructive criticism too, just anything to just
constructive criticism is good as long as it's a positive review on Amazon. But write me personally with the other stuff.
Right. Not on Amazon, the good stuff, because yes, we want people to hear the goodness of this book. And what did my guest say? I love this saying, you can't say the right thing to the wrong person and the wrong thing to the right person. So yes, all the beautiful reviews on Amazon. I want to end here. And if anybody has any more questions, we talked about some pretty big topics. If you have any comments or anything you want to ask Robert, if it's about your faith journey or whatever, just put it in here, or you can, you can also write me. If it's more private, I can get it to Robert and he can get back with you. I want to talk about your career. You are such an honored comedian. At the Christian Comedy Association, we all love you. You've been a mentor to me. Some of my favorite jokes that I tell, you have helped me punch them up. You give, we're talking about all these other things in your life, but the other reality is you are a very gifted, talented actor, comedian, and you've given of yourself to so many comedians and helped them along the way. Some of the many things that you've done is you've done warm-up acts for the new adventures of old Christine, Just Shoot Me, Becker, the reboot of One Day at a Time. I always loved that show. The show Step by Step. You've been on stage on Comic Strip Live. A million places. You've toured the country doing comedy. You've also been on Wings, Perfect Strangers, Hogan's Family. They can hear you. I hear you on Sirius XM. We'll be driving along with the family. I'm like, everybody, shush. Robert's on. And then we turn up the radio. It goes on and on and on. I could talk about you forever in your career, but would you just tell us, like, I don't even know where to begin with that. Like, do you have any funny, embarrassing moments or things that you can give for inspiration to glean from in all of this? Or what have you loved? And I don't know, just you take it there with your career, because if anybody has a question, let me know, because there's so many things I could ask you.
I am a blessed man who fell into a niche of doing the TV warm-up, and that has kept me alive for 30 some years. What to say if a new person's coming up? Leland Clausen asked me this the other day, and he said, what advice would you give to people coming up? And I always say a couple things, and this goes not really to the joys of what I did, because it was so much fun. I had so much fun. There's nothing better than having Ted Danson talk to you, or Julia Louis-Dreyfus come up and give you a hug before the show starts. Those kind of things are kind of nice. And Norman Lear calling you back after his last show finished in the 90s, and he calls me up and says, I can't do the show until you're on it. Those kind of things, yeah, they help, and they help boost the ego. But they don't really, Hollywood doesn't care about you. They don't really feed anything more than your ego for a little bit of time and your bank account for a little bit of time. But the lesson I've learned is you're not all that. You're saying I've done a lot of things, but they don't mean anything. If you come home with a big attitude, like, hey, I'm really important, and it's like God will knock the wind out of you. What's important are when all is said and done, it's your family, your friends, your relationship with God. And those are the things you have to hang on to. Those are the things you can't lose on the way. Mm-hmm. So I always tell people, you're not all that. You've got to make sure that you find a way to keep, when you do a big concert and a big TV show and with hanging out with stars, you come back home and you've got to change the diapers. You got to take out the trash. It's like, this is what life is. This is the important stuff, not the other stuff. The show business gleam, is just, those are just sparkle. Those are shiny objects. So pursue what is important. The next thing is find a mentor. You talked about me mentoring people. I haven't mentored half as much as I need to, should do. But find that mentor, because I wish I had somebody. I was just too headstrong. I was competent. I could do it on my own. And by gum, I'm going to solve this. It's like, no, find someone who'll give you advice as you go down the road, because you'll avoid the pitfalls. And I wish I would have, switched gears or switched. God works everything out for good. I understand that. But I had that desire for, I have a desire now that I wish I would have had a mentor. So I just think it's a good advice for everybody. And finally, this pandemic will prove, save your money. You think when you're making money, this is going to come in forever. No, it's not. There's going to be some surprise down the road where you're going to realize, I really should have put something away for a rainy day. Mine was, we had a huge house in 2007, and that was my retirement. I was going to sell the big house, and then the recession wiped out everything. So now I have to do a thing called rely on God. And that's absolutely fine. But no, my retirement was wiped out. And so, I'm fine. I've got residuals. I've got this. I've got other things. But I have what's important. But that comfort I was looking for is gone. So just to help everybody, granted, you may want to just live through faith, and that's it. But I'd like to have a little retirement in about 5 years when I leave all this. So.
Yeah.
Those are quick things.
I love everything that you're talking about. And I love that you touched on the fact that we are not what we are creatively or professionally. And that is exactly why I've inverted my show. That I used to start with, this person has done this and they've done that, and let's talk about that. But that's not, I want to talk about that at the end. But what I like to get to is the heart of the matter of what God's put in the person's life that they have to have to share, that they've overcome. That's where the grit is. That's where the story is. Everything else, like you said, is a shiny object on the top of the cake. That's it. But I love that you pointed that out, because that is the truth. And our identity can be so caught up in who we are and what we do, and it's not about that. And I love that you're talking about who you are in Christ, and that is it. That's going to carry you through all the ups and downs that we have talked about. I can't help and I can't not mention this. I talked about it last night in the promo. I say it to you all the time. I love everything you've done, but VeggieTales.
That's the most important thing.
It's my fave. It is. I said it last night that I've told my story a billion, zillion, cajillion times that I was like, not only not a believer, I didn't want to hear about it. Don't talk to me about it. I would get angry. Talk about anger. Like, stop. David used to mention, why don't you watch Joyce Meyer in the beginning of our marriage? And like, I don't want to hear it. And I just didn't want to hear about religion. I didn't want to hear about Jesus. But I remember when my son McGuire was little, I'd walk by the TV. I'd put on VeggieTales, because I don't even know where we got. Maybe I got it at a garage. I don't know where I got it. Someone gifted it to me. I don't know where it came from. I really don't remember where we got it. But the tomato and the cucumber, and they were laughing and they were talking about Jesus. And I'm like, hey, they can talk about Jesus and not be serious, not be judgy. So just talk about VeggieTales for a second, because I just want
the genius of Phil Vischer doing and Bob Naraki doing VeggieTales was just it's what I try to do through humor, and a lot of comedians do, is that you lower defenses by opening the door with comedy. Mm-hmm. And so people they have a hard time getting angry when Bob and Larry are having fun. It's like, this is hilarious. And then they sneak a message in, and it's just the smartest thing. It was great. Now, I got involved with VeggieTales because they started making movies. And when they made the movies, then they needed to have the pipeline. They needed to have the short vignettes, the regular just video series going. So they brought me in, and they were trying to find someone. They could find people who knew scripture, and they could find people who understood the Monty Python kind of humor. They couldn't find very many people who could do both. And so I just happened to fall in that niche. And the way I got it, the first story was fun. I did Joseph, and so the Ballad of Little Joe. Yeah. And I gave them pages and pages of ideas. And on one page was a Western, and on like the fifth page was Joseph. And when I left the meeting, they said, we love that story of Joseph as a Western. And I go, yeah, that's my favorite idea too. It wasn't even on there, but they put it in their mind. So that was the first one I wrote for them. And then I went on to Sherlock Holmes and then the story of Gideon. And I did a lot of short. I just had so much fun. But again, when they went to do a movie, I would come in. We did a Christmas one. It's just so many stories. But I tell people, how bad could a life be when you're writing punchlines for vegetables? It's like, all right, how did I get here? It was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. And I will give you I love to tell the story because this is the one story one joke that never got in. So I did the Sherlock Holmes, which is called Sherlock Holmes. And if you know the story from Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, Sherlock Holmes snorted cocaine. And he played the violin and he snorted cocaine. And one of those little, oh, really, did he? Well, it's turn of the century and it wasn't illegal then. So I had Larry with a bottle of Coke and a straw going up his nose and bubbles coming out the other side. And he goes, I don't get this at all. But somehow they wouldn't let that in. They thought children would emulate that. And I said, well, no, just the parents are the only ones that are going to get it. And or the ones who understand what Sherlock Holmes did. But they cut that joke. They wouldn't do it. So I always thought that was my favorite Larry Boy joke.
And even when you say that, I can hear his voice saying that. That is just, that is so good. Oh, I love hearing the backstories. Look at this. Somebody is referring to you as Mr. Lee. Monica says, Mr. Lee, how will I find you to write to you? Facebook, email?
Yes, you can definitely do Facebook, but you can also do my email, which is info@robertglee.com. So simple as that, info@robertglee.com. But I'm on Twitter. You can follow me there. I'm on Facebook. You can follow me there and just, write me a message.
Oh, I love it. Well, in closing, I would love if you would just give your one more piece of advice for people just that are going through in this pandemic. I mean, we were just talking last night about the hardship, kids at home at school, that parents have to work, and the feeling of disappointment, losing jobs so much. I was just sharing with my daughter. I just want to share this. She taught me something last night because yesterday she had this big plan, and this goes along with the question that I'm asking you. She had this big plan. She was really excited about something yesterday, and we worked on it all day. It was going to be a surprise. It was this notion in her head about how she wanted it to go and see. And then as it went on, it was wonderful. But I think she felt that some of the things didn't look the way that she had envisioned them. And I thought of that first thing this morning. I saw it in a different way, and I thought, she was feeling that comparison between her desire and what she wanted to have happen or see happen and the excitement. And then we all know that feeling where the air comes out of the balloon. And a lot of people, there's a lot of air coming out of a lot of balloons right now, and what we're going through in real true hardship. What encouraging words would you have to say to anybody that's feeling that way right now? And like I had said, promoting this today, that you just don't know what to do. You don't know where to turn, I know you've covered a lot of that today, but what would your closing thoughts be on that?
Well, the bottom line here, and as you're talking about this, I think this will help, is that good things come out of bad times. And history is filled with all these things that happen only because of adversity. And I brought up Job and Joseph, those are two, but Albert Einstein, I did a lot of research on him when I wrote this book, and I found out that he was a Jew in Germany pre-World War I, and they would not let him be a practical physicist because he was Jewish. He could only be a theoretical physicist. So he worked as a patent clerk, and he had time to just let his imagination run wild. Mm-hmm. And here's the man that, because he was oppressed, we got the theory of the Big Bang. We got the theory of relativity. We got E=mc². Mm-hmm. We got all these theories that if he had been a practical physicist and done what he wanted to do, he never would have achieved what he achieved. It's because they intended it for evil, but God intended it for good. That we got the greatest imagination of a man who just sat back and just thought in the patent office hours and hours and hours on end. If he had to prove his theories, he might not have gotten half as far as he did. So that's just one example. There's so many stories throughout history that good things came out of adversity. Another quick one is Napoleon. I love this one. He was losing more troops to malnutrition that he was to cannon fire or any kind of combat, because they couldn't get food to last. And so he put out a huge reward that anyone who could solve that problem, he would give them a king's ransom. That's how we came up with canned food. Someone figured out how to put food and take out the air, and it would stay in the can, and then the soldiers would just open it up and eat on the battlefield. And that's how he started winning all of his battles, because his soldiers were fed. So there's story after story. Sir Isaac Newton, it was when he lived during a big plague, and they closed Cambridge down, and he had to go home. His career, he had a trajectory. It was yanked out from underneath him. But when he was home, he invented calculus and the theory of gravity. That's where he observed gravity with the apple falling from the tree, but it all came from him being at home, just working with his imagination. So my advice to everyone is just understand that there's light at the end of the tunnel. Good things come out of adversity. You don't like it. You don't like being in the middle of it. But if you hold on, something will come down the road where you'll see, oh, that was actually, I'm glad I went through it. How many times have you gone through bad? As I say, look back at God's track record. Look at your life at all the really, really bad times, and I guarantee you, you will find a glimmer of hope when you came out of it. And just realize you're in the middle of it right now. Your act is not done yet. The story is not written. You're in the crisis where it's bad. The climax is going to come. You're going to make it out of this. So always realize the story is not over.
I'm just saying, I don't know what you are. Brilliant. You are a faith-filled man. I just adore you as my friend. I am so thankful for you. And I know that so many people watching today that might have just felt hopeless. I can't even tell you. I'm trying to think of how I'm going to go through this episode and break it up for little tidbits, beams of light. I wouldn't even know where to begin, but you've given so much today, Robert. Thank you so, so much.
Oh, my pleasure. Yeah.
Say the title of your book one more time. I know it, but I don't want to mess it up. So I'd love for you to just share the title again.
It's called What's the Big Idea? A Comedian Explains God, the Universe, and Other Minor Stuff.
Just a few minor things, just a few minor topics. I love it. And I can't wait to get my hands on it. So it sounds like it'd be a great Christmas gift for this season.
Oh, I think it's right up there with Baby Yoda as far as the most popular Christmas gift out there. Yeah.
I mean, two of the best gifts ever. Yes. Oh gosh. Well, I'm going to say goodbye to you, but I'm going to talk to you in just a second. But just a heartfelt thank you from me and the cubbyhole here. I'm just so thankful for you. So thank you, Robert.
Total pleasure.
Okay. I'll talk with you in just a minute. Oh my gosh. Isn't he great? He is so great. And I really hope that served your heart well today, because we need it. We need that in this world. And it is not hopeless. We are not hopeless. I love that Robert said that Christianity is a hindsight religion. And it just reminds me of all the things in our world where even adversity, we can be walking forward, feeling hopeless, and we can turn back around and say, there was good in it. It just depends on, sometimes it's hard to put on that new prescription lens to see it, but there is hope in just knowing that is possible. And when we're ready for that, it's there and it's waiting. I love the fact that Robert is a warm-up act for so many shows in Hollywood, and he's done such a good job with that. But what crossed my heart today is he very well may have just been a warm-up act for somebody that is seeking to believe in something bigger than themselves. And just the concept of Jesus alone, if you have ever felt like you just can't, he may have just warmed somebody's heart and been a precursor to that journey that you may go on, that you will never forget and you will never regret. So I wish you all a beautiful weekend. I can't wait to see you all next week. I think it's November 27th, the day after Thanksgiving. I'm going to be on with another very powerful guest, Peter Nielsen. He has quite the story to tell about overcoming. So in this month of November, I am so thankful to be able to talk about thankfulness and hope. Okay, for now, I say goodbye, but I look forward to seeing you all again next week. Bye, everybody. And thank you again, Robert.